You are listening to the IFH Podcast Network. For more amazing filmmaking and screenwriting podcasts, just go to ifhpodcastnetwork.com.
Welcome to the Indie Film Hustle Podcast, episode number 416. Acting is the ability to dream on cue. Ralph Richardson.
Broadcasting from the back alley in Hollywood, it's the Indie Film Hustle Podcast, where we show you how to survive and thrive as an indie filmmaker in the jungles of the film biz. And here's your host, Alex Ferrari.
Welcome to another episode of the Indie Film Hustle Podcast. I am your humble host, Alex Ferrari. Today's show is sponsored by Rise of the Filmtrepreneur, how to turn your independent film into a profitable business. It's harder today than ever before for independent filmmakers to make money with their films. From predatory film distributors ripping them off to huckster film aggregators who prey upon them, the odds are stacked against the indie filmmaker. The old distribution model of making money with your film is broken, and there needs to be a change. The future of independent filmmaking is the entrepreneurial filmmaker or the filmtrepreneur. In Rise of the Filmtrepreneur, I break down how to actually make money with your film projects and show you how to turn your indie film into a profitable business. With case studies examining successes and failures, this book shows you the step-by-step method to turn your passion into a profitable career. If you're making a feature film, series, or any other kind of video content, the Filmtrepreneur method will set you up for success. The book is available in paperback, ebook, and of course, audiobook. If you want to order it, just head over to www.filmbizbook.com. That's filmbizbook.com. And this show is also sponsored by the Film Distribution Blueprint. It is my course on how to teach filmmakers not to get screwed over by predatory film distributors. And it will show you the entire process of working with a traditional film distributor and how to avoid pitfalls when working with predatory film distributors. If you want to gain access, head over to indiefilmhustle.com/let me in. Now, guys, today on the show, we have an old friend of mine, Joseph Reitman. And Joe has been acting in Hollywood in some of the biggest movies and TV shows now for over 25 years. And I wanted to talk to Joe about what it's like acting in the time of COVID and how SAG is dealing with COVID, how actors are being treated on set, how actors are being treated by their own union, all of those things, because I know as difficult as it is to think about being a filmmaker at this time, imagine what it's like being an actor in these crazy, crazy times. Now, you guys might recognize Joe from my first feature film, This Is Meg, where he was the co-star with Jill Michelle Million. And he definitely was one of the most memorable parts of shooting that film. I absolutely loved working with Joe. It was an honor. And Joe has been like in every movie and television show ever, from The Punisher to Charmed to Perfect Storm and Money Monster with George Clooney and Jodie Foster, M. Night Shyamalan's Lady in the Water, Kevin Smith's Jay and Silent Bob Strikes Back, and Jay and Silent Bob Reboot, which was just released this year. So I thought I'd bring Joe on so we could talk shop and to talk about what the future of film production is from an actor's point of view. So without any further ado, please enjoy my conversation with Joseph Reitman. I'd like to welcome back to the show, actually, returning champion Joseph Reitman. How you doing, Joe?
What up? Good to see you. How are you?
You actually made an appearance on the show when we did that This Is Meg episode, when we recorded the whole gang at the Cinequest world premiere.
I did. That's correct. We did the whole thing with that little thing in the middle of us. And I think where we were in a hotel room, right?
We were in a hotel room, and I busted out my iPhone. iPhone 5, whatever it was. And I'm like, okay, we're just going to record it here, guys. And we just passed around the iPhone. It was.
It wasn't bad. It wasn't bad conversation. It was a good conversation.
It was good. So for everybody who doesn't know Joe, Joe was one of my main actors in my first feature film, This Is Meg, with the lovely Jill Michelle Million. And if you're watching this, you might recognize one of the sets from This Is Meg, which is behind Joseph. Joe's shoulder, which is his lovely living room, and he so kindly helped us out with on the road to making millions with that film.
Yes. So, yeah, those getting highly paid for like location, all that stuff, right?
All of it. You have received all the checks, right?
Yeah, all of them.
All of them, good, because we've been sending them. We've been sending them. Just let me know. As soon as I get them, you get them. So that's just the way it rolls.
Yeah. Well, I must say about This Is Meg, interesting enough, it is out of all of the indie things that I've done.
Yeah.
When people see it, I'm always amazed how people always talk to me about my relationship with Jill in that movie, because they're like, you guys really seem like best friends. I'm like, well, we really are. It's a really weird thing, right? It's super weird.
It's not a lot of acting there. It's just, we're just acting. And that was what I wanted to catch with you two, because you were just being yourselves, like that silly scenes and all that kind of stuff. But I still remember, if I may, when you saw the film for the first time, we were in the audio facility and we watched it, and I still remember your face, and you looked puzzled, because I think you walked up to Jill afterwards. She's like, that actually that looks like a movie. Like you were shocked because of what you saw we were shooting and how we were shooting it. And, it was like, it turned out like a real movie.
Yeah. Well, I've done a lot of low budget projects, living in Hollywood and having friends who everyone's like, let's shoot something. So you do that a lot. And especially, obviously Curb Your Enthusiasm was a big hit, and Jill's like, let's do something just off the cuff. And I knew she and I were having fun, and we had a crew of 5, right? So there's nobody here, 3. 5.
Well, we had 3. We had 3 people plus
me and her.
Yeah. If you include you and Jill, yes, then 5. And the dogs.
Right.
And the dogs.
The dogs, yeah. But Jill and I also whatever. We're moving stuff and ordering lunch. I say it's 5. So it's I was location manager. So,
you obviously were, yes.
Yeah, okay. But you take a look at all that stuff, and you sit there what's gonna, what are we gonna have at the end of this thing? It'll be fine. And but yeah, at the end of the day, I was like, this looks a lot better than I shouldn't have thought it would. It definitely looked a lot better. You bang for the buck on the screen. It was great, really great.
Yeah, it was just fun, and I still never forgot that, because it was just kind of it's kind of like a real movie. And I think Jill felt the same way, and a lot of people who saw that movie, because it had no business looking even remotely okay.
Not sucky. Yeah, not sucky.
Yeah, it didn't have any reason. There was no reason for it to look halfway decent. It just no.
I literally sat there. I'm like, because you sit there, the phrase hey, this doesn't suck is actually a real honest answer for how you thought the movie might look, right? You're like, this doesn't suck.
This doesn't suck.
This is pretty solid, Yeah. Yeah. It falls in a weird zone for me, because the stuff with Jill, it's not in a place that would make my reel necessarily, because it doesn't really fall into that zone. Oh, no. But it's also much better than 90% of the crap that's out there. So it's a weird position. But it was very good. It was really good.
So for people who are watching, they might see that face and they go, I've seen him somewhere besides Meg. I've seen him. Obviously, no.
Not recently though.
Not recently. No, not for years now. Not for years. But you are one of those actors who have been in everything. But before we get into this filmography, how did you get into the business?
Oh, how far back do we want to go? How did I become an actor, or how did I get into Hollywood? Those are two different questions.
I say, how do you get into Hollywood? Because that's kind of where the stuff kind of starts.
Sort of. It started with me in high school, actually getting, I was in high school. We'll go back for a second and we'll go through this quick. But I was in, when I was little, I would always act in front of the mirror to myself or whatever. And I never took an acting class. And then in high school, there was a company going to London to do a show. And without telling anybody, I went and auditioned for the company. And I came home and I went, Mom, I have good news and bad news. The good news is that I got into a theater company that's going to London to perform for 2 weeks. And she was like, what? And I said, yeah. I go, bad news is we have to find out how to pay for me to go to London for 2 weeks. So I was like, oh, no, I don't know what to do now. She's like, what did you do? I go, I just went and auditioned and just did this thing. And so I got into the company and I went and performed in London for this theater a festival called the Newham International Festival of Theatre in England, NIFTY, and the NIFTY Festival.
Right.
And we performed all over London, and we did a show at this all-girls school. And after the show, there were like 40 girls waiting for me. And I went, I might be pretty decent at this, I think,
This is gonna work out. This is gonna work out.
Yeah, and I kind of like this. I was like, 16, being like, oh, this is a good hook for me. And so I kind of knew at that point. I went off to college and studied theater and film at the Claremont colleges. Studied theater at Pomona while I went to Pitzer. Then I graduated. And then while I was there, back in the day before there was the internet, you remember, right? Mm-hmm. There was a bulletin board at our school, and there was something put on the bulletin board about AFI looking for an actor, right? They wanted a guy who could play a high school football player, and I was playing college football, and I was like, I could do that. And I didn't know how to drive because I grew up in Boston. I didn't have a license. And a friend of mine from college drove me into town, who grew up in Beverly Hills, drove me to AFI. And I went in for an audition to play this high school football player who was making out with this girl in the backseat of a car and drinking and being me.
Yeah. You at that time. Sure.
Yeah, exactly. And I got the job. And that was like the first thing I'd ever done. Like I'd never done anything. In my first audition, I was like, this is amazing.
It's so easy to be an actor.
Yeah, right? Oh, my God. I got an AFI thesis film in my first audition. This is crazy. And
you thought you made it. You made it.
I mean, compared to everybody else in my school, look, everyone else in my theater department who graduated with me who were very good actors, only one girl who was brilliant does voiceover, and everybody else didn't act again. You know what I mean? And I said, I'm going to Hollywood. And I thought it was easy, mm-hmm. And I got an agent pretty quick. And I got sent on an audition. They were looking for a long-haired motorcycle kind of like guy for this commercial, right? And I went, oh, my God, I have a motorcycle. I have long hair. I'm perfect. And I drove to this audition, and there were 40 motorcycles parked outside like the place that they were in the casting. And it was before I even went in the room, I was like, oh, no. And it was like a super huge awakening for me, thinking that I was so unique. And I walked in, and there were 40 long-haired, leather jacket-wearing guys just like me. And
that's the thing. That's the thing about Hollywood that people don't understand, and LA in general. It's like when you come out from, because I come from the East Coast, you come from the East Coast. When you're there, you're that big fish in the East Coast or outside of LA. But when you get here, what made you look so unique, you show up to something like that and you're just like, oh, there's 40 guys who look just like me, and most of them look better than me, and most of them got insane credits.
Yeah, and I've seen half of them on TV, and I was like, oh, no. My first audition was so eye-opening, real like punch in the gut. And I tell people, Hollywood is the land where the elephants come to die. You know what I mean? That's what I tell people.
That's a good that's good.
Yeah, right? It's like, this is where the elephants come to die. You're the biggest and the baddest of where you grew up, and you come here, and that's it. And then next thing you know, you're walking down Hollywood Boulevard, falling in between the cracks of the stars on the fucking Walk of Fame, and you're like, whoa, trying not to slip in between the cracks. That's all you're trying to do. You walk down Hollywood Boulevard and you recognize one in every 5 names that you see on that sidewalk. And at some point, each one of those names was the biggest in what they did. Every single one of them at some point, and you sit there and you go, that's how fleeting it is. It's like, I only know like 20% of these names, and 80% of them are fantastic and powerful and strong. And here we are, just hoping that somebody just pays attention. Now, with all that said, I've also spent all my time since then trying to create a unique voice for myself. I mean, that, it wakes you up and makes you realize I might not have been that different than everybody else or 40 other guys, but there has to be something that makes me unique. And that's a big part of like what I've focused on in my career, even if it's hurt me at times and means that I can't play your average, school teacher all the time. I'd rather my own voice.
When I saw you on Just Magic the other day, when my daughters were watching it on Amazon Prime, and I'm like, oh, there's Joe. And I think they said, isn't he the actor who was in This Is Meg? I'm like, yeah, it is. Yes, it is. He's like, I was just telling Joe before we came on, is like, I was just watching like an episode of Monk, and he popped up, and I was watching The Punisher, and he pops up. Like, he's just that face that pops up. Yeah. Everywhere. And for people listening, I don't even know if I told this story when we first had you on the show, but I knew I recognized your face, and I only knew you at the time as the guy who was on Charmed, because I was like the dude who was on Charmed because you had such a unique look. And I was selling olive oil for my olive oil company at the Calabasas Farmers Market. And you would show up with your dark jacket and your helmet, and you would go and buy your stuff. And I always just remember seeing you because I'm like, oh, there's the dude from Charmed, you know. And I think Beau Bridges like followed you in one day, and I oh, there's Beau Bridges. But it was, and then years later, I'm talking to Jill, and she's like, me and my buddy Joe should be in this. And I look at him like, oh my God, I can't believe it's the guy from Charmed.
That guy tries my balsamic every week and doesn't buy anything.
He doesn't buy a thing, sir. You didn't buy a thing. Beau Bridges bought some balsamic from me, sir. Yes, but not you.
I apologize.
But to be fair, though, you did lend me your house for a film shoot. So
I did.
So for that, we're even. Even Steven, sir. Even Steven.
Charmed was a job.
But you have such a unique look. You have a Joseph Reitman type, as you were saying earlier. Can you tell that story? Can you tell that story?
The thing is, it's funny because people who know me from Charmed, I did and I also did Supernatural, and it's the same people who watch both those shows, really, you know. Mm-hmm. And but people sit there and they go, "God, you're so much older." I'm like, "Yeah, I did Charmed 20 years ago." I'm like, yes. Like
it's called reruns. It's not live. It's reruns.
No, 20 years ago. And they're like, "Oh, you look older." I'm like, I do. It's like, that's exactly what happens, you know. Nothing I can do about that. Apologize.
I try.
Yeah, I've tried it. I've maintained as good as I can. You know, man. Like, I can tell you the people I grew up with.
Look, 60. You look great for 65, bro. I don't know. I don't care what anyone tells you.
I remember before there was color movies, and I was performing in the Borscht Belt with Abbott and Costello.
Borscht Belt.
And they did this thing. They started talking about who's on first, and I go, "That's funny. You should do that more often." The next thing you know, boom, they were no longer there.
That's amazing.
I'm a friggin' old man. We were talking about what we're talking about. We're talking about a type, right? I mean,
it's the Joseph Reitman type.
So, I had kind of created by about 20 years ago, right about the time just before Charmed in that area. I started kind of finding my own voice, right? And it took me time. There's a short version that leads up to that too. God, we just breezed by how I got to Hollywood too, but that doesn't matter. But we can go back to that if we want to. But like what happened was I was running a stand-up room in LA, and a guy in the stand-up room, there was a comedian named Eric Edwards who was at the time like 400 pounds. He was enormous. And I would introduce all the comics. I did like the openings for all of them. And so before I introduced him, I said, "Hey, the next comic we have is the biggest comic that we have coming up tonight." And when I say big, I mean friggin' huge. He's enormous. And that was like the setup of like the joke. And then he got up on stage and he was like, "That's really funny." He goes, "But what happens? Like when you audition, there's 2,000 guys who look like you in LA?" He's like, "There's only 4 like me." And I was like, and it kind of like ding. I was like, oh my God, he's absolutely right. I'm competing against like Casper Van Dien and friggin' like at the time, you know, and the guys, you know, Jason Priestley. I mean, I was auditioning against all these guys that I was not competing with really. Like I don't have a look like them, you know, and I was like, even if I tried to soften myself up or had my short hair and, you know, tried to be chiseled, it was not working. And I had a motorcycle accident and grew my beard and my hair grew out. And the next thing you know, I was getting cast. And it was, you know, I was like, oh my God, like I've grown into this thing. So I started getting cast as this character, this long-haired, scruffy kind of like guy. And it was really working for me. I had done some Married with Children's playing Kelly Bundy's boyfriend, which was my dream job. And I had her picture on my wall in college. Like,
obviously.
I can on my wall. And I was like in love with her. And all of a sudden, I told my friends I could play her boyfriend. And they're like, what makes you so sure? I said, because I can play a guy that thinks she's smart. And that is all I need to do. And I did. And so I ended up playing that role a few times. I then booked a show on ABC. And I was not available for a lot of the year. And what happened is that Married with Children released a breakdown saying, looking for Kelly's boyfriend for a role on the show. We're looking for a Joe Reitman type, right? And I happened to be off from the show I was working on. My agent goes, "You're never going to believe this. This is what they said. We're looking for a Joe Reitman type." And I said, Well, call them, tell them I'm available. My agent said, I did. They don't want you. And I was like, but they want my type. They went, yes. They want people to know what they were looking for, but they don't want you. And I was oh my
we want
God.
someone who looks like you, but we just don't want you.
Well, there's the 5 stages of Hollywood. You've heard that before, haven't you?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Good. Please,
right?
please, for everybody in the audience.
Right. For those who don't know, the 5 stages of Hollywood is like, who's Joe Reitman, right? We want Joe Reitman. We want somebody like Joe Reitman. We want a young Joe Reitman. Who's Joe Reitman, right? I'm currently in stage 5. So no. But that's.
I want a young Joe Reitman. Oh, that's. But you know what? It is. It's funny, but it's the truth. That is the absolute truth. And that is the life cycle of an actor in Hollywood. It's brutal. I mean, I think nowadays more than ever, there's so much more opportunity for actors to build something outside of just acting and maybe do their own work or produce their own projects and things like that to just, do, like what you do, you teach and other things you can do to generate revenue. That's not just act, you're at the whim of somebody else.
Look, when I moved to Hollywood, you had a choice. You wait tables, bartend pretty much, and then you just had to hope that you could hold on to that job long enough until you had a break. And now that's changed because you can't make enough money acting to do that. Like acting money is not as good as it was 20 years ago. It's not the same. Right. Because there's less channels and because of the, obviously everything's watered down. My day rate, if you do for interest and kind of like inflation, the day rate of an actor has gone down tremendously. And as you know, you can pay people $125 a day to act in a movie now, if you want to, and then release it on Netflix. Right. So it's crazy. When I did ER 25 years ago, they paid me $1,000 for the day and I had no credits and I did one line on that show.
And you got residual, and you're still probably getting residual payments off of that.
Got one yesterday. Yeah, totally. Yeah.
Is it a Seinfeld residual check? Is it 2 cents? Remember that episode where he got 5,000 2-cent checks?
Yeah, they've gotten better at that in the sense that the last one I got, they've now bundled it. Like Warner Brothers bundles it. So I got it was ER, Supernatural, blah, blah, blah. It's a bunch of them, right? So they kind of, but Married with Children still kind of comes in at 2 cents. Yeah. So Married with Children now is when I get a check, people are like, I say Married with Children, residual check. I'm like, not really. That's not really going to happen anyway.
It's going to cost me more to mail it. I mean,
it's no more a latte. It's no more coffee today. It's none of that. But residual are still, for me, I mean, a big part, during this time of struggle where a lot of people are struggling, I've had a few decent checks from some movies and that does help.
So let's talk about, so I wanted to bring you on the show, not to just chat because we could talk for hours about Hollywood and your career and we're going to get to some of your Hollywood stories because I have been privy to some of these stories on set and they're legendary. But as far as COVID is concerned, I mean, obviously this is the elephant in the room and now it's, I long for the days of January 2020. Or November 2019. You remember those days where you could go out to eat and do all these other things and maybe just work as well on a set.
See a friend or
Oh, yes, excuse me. We don't have to go that far.
Anything.
Sit in a room with somebody else.
Yeah.
Without a hazmat suit on.
With somebody who I don't really know that well. Whatever it may be. Take anything.
We'll take anything. So right now, I wanted to hear from the perspective of an actor and from what you're hearing on the quote unquote streets, from actors and how, cause it's like we were just saying, acting is rough from the get go in great circumstances. It's a brutal side of, there's so many brutal sides of this business. Screenwriters, I mean, everyone gets a hit, but actors, I feel so much more because I think a lot with actors, they don't have control. They're passengers in the car. They have your
chess pieces. That's it.
Yeah. They have no control of where they're going. They're just, I have to jump on this. Oh, this truck looked like it's going somewhere cool. Let me jump on it. As opposed to a director, a producer, or even a screenwriter, they have somewhat more control.
Well, I mean, here's the thing. It's it depends, right? I'm in a position where I get to choose whether or not I want to get if I want to be a passenger on something. I'm lucky to be in a place where I get the call. I also have a lot of actors who I coach who are basically running around traffic, hoping not to get hit by a car. You know,
right.
You know, they're like anybody, right?
I'll do anything.
I'll do anything. Yeah, a girl wrote to me yesterday. And she's like, "Should I do non-union stuff?" I'm like, "Right now, absolutely not. I would not even consider doing something non-union right now." You know, and to go back to what you're saying, in this COVID time, actors are panicking. Right? Actors are panicking, being like, should I do non-union shoots? Everything seems to be non-union. I'm like, that's because some people don't want to follow like the COVID-19 regulations, and I don't want to be on a set that doesn't want to do that.
Okay, all right, so let's talk about that. So from an actor's perspective, the union, SAG-AFTRA, they actually put out specs on what has to happen and they just shut down like a Michael Bay production.
They did. So yeah.
They shut down a couple of things that they weren't abiding by this. So can you tell the audience what is SAG, what are the rules for SAG, and then why you would not work with a non-union situation right now?
Well, the Songbird shoot issue is a little bit different in the sense that they sent out a breakdown asking actors to make tapes to send in, and then they were going to decide what they were going to put in their movie. So they were asking actors basically to shoot content for them, right? And if you took a look at their release, it was one-sided. You know, pretty much you send to them, you know, they have all rights to your material. They can decide what they want to pay you. It really was, you know, we'll pay you SAG wages, but no way of knowing if they're going to pay you $125 or whatever. But for shooting your own content, which you and I both know is not like, you know, it's just not up and up, right? It's not the right way to operate.
No.
And they got called on it. So, you know, that much I know is true. And then I don't know what else they've been called on, but I know that came up. But, you know, I wasn't really surprised, but I saw the contract that they had offered, and I chose not to shoot something, even though I had a lot of friends who did, right? Hoping to be in a Michael Bay movie, right? But when we take a look at like what's going to happen in this universe, and we talk about like what SAG's guidelines are going to be, who knows how much they're going to be able to protect people. Now, you and I both know you have to protect the actor, right? Like,
yeah.
You have to, right? Because you can't have me get sick and shut down the production. You have to protect me. So I know that a shoot that I'm a lead in is going to take every precaution they can to make sure I don't get sick, right? But if I'm a day player, that's a problem.
Or God forbid, extra.
Extra, right? Yeah, because then they're not going to care. Because then you're in and out and like whatever if you get infected. So being in a position of power matters, I think, in taking an acting job, depending on what it is right now, right? And in some productions, I've talked to people about being made a producer on the project, so I actually have say in some of the protective situations that take place. If we're going to be going in a film like This Is Meg, I'm like, I need more control in what my safety precautions are going to be and what I'm going to be okay with.
I mean, could we? I mean, we couldn't shoot Meg today. There's no way. There's just no way that you would allow all five of us to come into your house.
But if we shot an entire movie, just the five of us, and we'd all like, you know,
quarantined
for like a week or two before we all agreed because we know each other. And, you know, you can control two other guys and be like, no going out. This is what we're doing. And they go, okay. And like, you know, and if you offer them some money for being at home, I mean, there's a way to do it.
Yeah, we can make it work. Absolutely.
That to make it kind of work with a group of five. You can't, and you can do Avatar because you can buy a friggin' city. Or buy like I would shut down the Sheraton on the top of the hill at Universal, and I would turn that into like a quarantined building, and then have a tunnel and vans that specifically go to the back of the building with our own elevator. That, you know, they could do that too, right? For a $200 million movie. The problem is those movies that are $500,000 to like $3 million, and everyone's wearing more than one hat, like, and then you have to wipe down the sets, and everyone has to get tested in the morning. You're losing an hour a day just because of PPE issues, right? So you're losing extra 10% of your day because of those things, which obviously astronomically affects the budget at the end of the day, you know. Plus, you can't give me a honey wagon anymore, right? Like you have to like get half bangers for all the actors because you're locking us down.
And just real quick, just for everybody who's telling what a honey wagon and a half banger is.
Oh, I'm sorry, that's my bad.
I know what it is, but just tell the audience.
I know you're like, can you explain to me how this works? Honey wagon is a
lens. What is that?
What is that? What exactly is a camera? So you sit there when we go to set as an actor, like part of what goes into your contract is the size of your private space, right? So your dressing room in that, and a honey wagon is a trailer that has usually 6 rooms in it. I'd say, right? Six.
Yeah, it's
and,
like that. Yeah, they're all slotted off.
It's like an 18-wheeler almost, and every room is like it's broken into 6. It's literally a tiny space.
It's a cell. It's a cell.
Yeah,
Let's just call it what it is. It's a cell.
Yeah, really. Yeah, it's like 6 by 10. Right. I think I'd say it's about 6 by 10 feet, and enough change room. And there's a bathroom in that room, and there's a place that you can lie down, sit down, and a mirror, and there's nothing in it. It's really just a changing room where you can like plug in your radio and sit on the steps and kind of wait. You don't even want to be in the room, right? Because it is smaller than solitary confinement in a prison. It's smaller than that.
Right.
So you really live in it. A half banger is a truck that has two rooms in it. That's why it's called a half banger, because half of it is a space. A half banger usually has a couch in it, a TV, a fridge. It has more space to move around in. And then when you see like, movie stars who are like their entire truck, like, those are their own private things, and they have those,
or if it's Robert Downey Jr. on Avengers, all the other Avengers are envious of his situation.
Right.
He had a city. He had like a city. That was all Robert.
Yeah, whatever he wants. Yeah, I mean, and look, the thing is like some actors buy their own like Airstreams and kind of deck them out too, and they kind of have their own built out things that they build, but. It's interesting. There are different sizes, but honey wagons kind of are going to be a thing of the past for actors that you want to have on set for a long time, because usually the honey wagon's there just to be there, and then the actor walks around. He kind of like goes to craft service, which no longer exists, and he would go, and I would hang out in Video Village because I'm watching over the shoulder because I want to watch playback. I always want to watch directors direct because I like learning from directors and always studying them. That will no longer happen. I'm not going to get that opportunity to be on set and to kind of observe, which is a big part of why I've taken some jobs in the past. It's just to be on set and watch people like Schrader work or wherever it might be, and it's like, so because of that, if you're going to put me on, I'm in my room or on set, you need to give me a bigger room because you can't confine me and not expect me to be able to function. So I think half bangers are going to be kind of like the half trailers are going to be kind of like the norm for every actor who has a bigger part. Craft service is gone, so everyone's going to get delivered their own little baggie of like. It's great for an actor like me who has allergies and stuff, because I'll say what my allergies are, and they'll deliver me a bag of my gluten-free whatever I want, and that'll be fine. But it's going to be an issue, and I don't know. You and I both know, like every set has that one dude who like doesn't like to follow the rules and goes out and get hammered at night, and it gets wasted and shows up. I wonder. I'm concerned. I'm concerned about what's going to happen, But
and that's the thing. Like, I mean, being on set, you have to. The risk is so massive now. I mean, look, when we're recording this, we are in July of 2020. Right. So if you're listening to this a year from now, either the world has come to an end and this is just the last things that have been left. If that's the case. Yeah. Good luck to you. Get gasoline and toilet paper. But we really don't know. Like when I've had interviews and talks in March and April, and I've been brought onto shows to ask, what do you think's going to happen? Like I can't see us shooting. Like if you've got $200 million, right? If you're Tyler Perry and you want to just quarantine people on your back lot because you're one person in the country that has that option, then yes, that works. But if you're $200 million movie, maybe you can go to New Zealand and shoot after you quarantine for 2 weeks.
You go there. You can, if you're doing a film that's in a small town in Alaska, you can shut down an entire town in Alaska, right? If you're shooting on an island like Survivor, you can quarantine for 2 weeks and go to a small private island, or do a movie on an island like Castaway and no one can come and go, right? There are options. And as you and I both know, the TV world has sent out a mandate to everyone saying, like, figure out episodes that don't require any guest stars and just contain our cast.
And no extras. Right.
Yeah. No extras. Narrow down guest stars. Keep it self-contained. Green screen's great. And that's what their mandate is, which hurts the entire industry because guys like me pop up on shows. And you're telling me that you don't want to bring me in for a week. If you're shooting in Austin, I would normally get flown to Austin to do a TV show. They're not going to fly me. They're not going to put anybody on a plane. They're going to hire locally, if anything, And
but how can you, as a producer of a film, the risk is just too great right now. Like, what insurance? No insurance is going to cover this. No production insurance is covering this.
No.
And you're taking it's Russian roulette at this point right now. At this point in July of 2020.
Right, July 2020. And what you're saying is absolutely, and I think that's the thing, is we're talking about, they'll have a vaccine by January and they'll have a better idea. I know some reality shows, I know some reality shows that have been functioning and they've been testing people and, some documentary type shows, and they test everybody, they go out and shoot for a week. But you know what? When you're doing a documentary, everyone who's behind the camera, you can lose them. And if, the camera guy gets sick or the first AC gets sick, you get a new one. So you want to take that risk, you get to switch them out. And I understand why they're doing that with like young people who are healthy. And I get why they're doing it. I also know those executive producers producing that show aren't going to set because they don't want to get sick, which is also friggin' sick. Like, you know what I mean? You're willing to put other people in danger, but not yourself I'm not a fan of that.
No, of course not.
You need to put some same risk than I am. Now, with what you said, and this is, I think, a huge, huge thing. I have a lot of actor friends who are like, I just want to go back to work, right? I hear them say, I just want to go back. I don't care anymore. I go, all right, let's say we're on set. We have a scene where like you need to shoot somebody today, right? And the prop guy comes over and hands you a gun and goes, here you go, and goes to walk away. And you say, aren't we going to do a safety check? And he goes, I don't think we need to.
I just don't want to be that close to you right now.
Yeah, I don't think we need to worry about the safety check, because honestly, what happens if you shoot somebody? If you pull the trigger and there was a bullet in there and it hit somebody, what are the odds of it hitting somebody? And if it does, they're only like 5% to die, right? So don't worry about it.
Yeah.
Do you then call the producers and be like, we're doing a safety check? Yes, you do. You don't just sit there. If I told you there was a 5% chance of you killing somebody on set because I handed you a gun, you would check the gun. You would not just go and say it's okay today.
Or stunts or any of that stuff.
We don't have to rehearse it. What are the odds of you dying doing the stunt, right? We don't have to worry about it. It's not taking
it just dramatically alters the entire filmmaking process in a way that has never happened in the history of our industry.
Very true.
It just hasn't. Even during the Spanish flu in 1918, which Hollywood was up and running by then, it was still in its infancy but there was still an industry. And they were still figuring things out. But even then, it didn't stop. I mean, this has stopped everything. I mean, I can't in good conscience produce a film unless I had if I had a Tyler Perry scenario.
Correct.
Where we just, there's going to be 2 weeks of quarantine. Everyone's staying at this hotel or at this house.
Lockdown.
It's a lockdown and there's no in and out, and it's going to be, you're locked up with us for the next 6 weeks. We're shooting and we're only going to shoot on this mountaintop. And we're doing The Revenant.
There are two. So this is the thing. I have a friend who has who's much like you, is an indie guy, but he has his own sound stages in New Mexico. Okay. And a friend of a friend, and he said he would not open up. And when he posted a thing that I read, and he said, here's the problem. It's like, how can I just rent out my studio to some like horror film that wants to make a movie, knowing that there's a pandemic out there, and knowing if somebody gets sick, the whole crew gets sick. If the whole crew gets sick, the odds are one of them dies. The math is if 20 people get sick, one dies, right? That's the math, right? He goes, I can't live with myself and that conscience, knowing that I'm putting somebody at risk just because some people are hungry to make some crappy $200,000 horror film. Like, I'm not going to do it. And I think, that's admirable. I also know it's difficult in this environment, but like you said,
financially, like, look, I know I both know so many people, crew members, who are just not working. And some of them, like, I know a lot of people in post are like, yeah, we're still finishing up something we were already in post on, but that's going to run out in the next, month or two.
A month.
And then after that, you're just like, what do you do? Animation's basically the only game in town right now. And
my show. Yes, sir. That's correct. Right.
It's animation's the only, my buddy works over at Disney and he's working at home. He's like a major animator at Walt Disney Animation. And he's like, I'm at home. And it doesn't look like any of us are going back, at least for the rest of this year. And I kept telling people in March, I go, I promise you, things will not even remotely start to look somewhat like we were before until next summer. Just
until next summer. Yeah, I mean, people said, do you think this year? I'm like, by when?
No way.
Like, if we get to November, if we get to Thanksgiving, it's over anyway. No one does anything from November to December. It's over anyway, right? So you're over if you get to October, you're done for the year. You're done. You're not starting pre-production and getting anything shot before then. And I've been offered a movie in August, right? Very, very, like, a short and a feature. I've been offered 2 projects. Both of them say they're going to follow PPE rules. Both of them are going to follow rules. Yeah. And I'm like, okay. And look, to both of them, I've been like, yeah, let's see where it goes. Right. I mean, I'm willing to listen. I'm willing to see where they head. I can't imagine either of them are going to actually happen, but like you said, the feature film, 2 actors, 1 house, 80 pages, 8 days. Right.
And it's a very controlled, like it's like a cabin in Big Bear.
Correct.
Then it's doable. That's a doable scenario. And even with that, correct, you've got to be super careful, and the quarantining, and you just can't. That's the thing. Like you and I both are a little psycho when it comes to going outside, because I follow your Facebook and you see mine too. That we have our big masks and all that kind of stuff. We go out because I've got a family, and you have dogs, and.
Yeah, I don't want them sick. No,
obviously. So, we want to protect ourselves. I can't see. I don't know. I don't know how we could even move forward on a project.
That's what I'm saying. It's like, a crew of and it would be like, this is Meg. We're talking about a crew of 5 people and 2 actors. We're talking about
in a house,
and it's being sponsored by a PPE company to prove that they can do this stuff. They're not doing it. So I'm like, well, then they're taking extra care. I know kind of like what we're going to get into over an 8-day period. If I'm being exposed to 4 people, it's really less than me just going outside. No one's going to have time. Yeah, no one's going to have time.
You'll have more risk going to the supermarket.
That's what I'm saying. Exactly. More risk. And no one, we're going to be working 12-hour days for sure over an 8-day shoot for 10 pages a day. So I'm like, look, it's not like anyone's going to have time to go out and cause trouble. So it is the safest of the options that I could think of if I was to do anything. The short is a little actually more difficult than that, to be honest.
Of course.
But
unless there's a major payday involved, which I doubt there is with a short, I mean, why? I would never in a million years put a risk for a short if I was an actor or even as a director. As a feature, again, there has to be, it has to be a big want and need to get that thing done.
And look, the need and want is that they're going to run out of content, and that's the pitch right now. Is like they're going to run out of content. We can sell this thing pretty quickly. They're giving me points in the back end. It's one of those conversations that you sit there and you're like, they might be right. This might actually be.
It might be, and it might not be. I mean, that's that. I feel if I may do a little myth busting, I've gotten deeper into the deep pool end of the pool with distribution recently. Sure. Not recently, it's like in the last year or so. And I've been talking to all the distributors and been to the film markets, and I'm still constantly figuring out what the deal is. I know of a film right now that has a decent cast, not like a name, but a decent cast, good production value, nice genre, and there's so much content sitting on the shelves right now that if anyone right now listening thinks they're going to make a feature, and just because they're one of the 5 features that are being made this month, they think that that's going to be an automatic payday, you are wrong.
And I agree with that.
You're wrong. It's not. And please don't, if anyone listening, don't make a quarantine movie. Don't make a COVID movie. Nobody wants to watch it. I don't want to see a COVID movie. I don't want to see an outbreak movie. I don't know. No. Just like after 9/11, nobody wanted to see a 9/11 movie. That's why in 1972, nobody wanted to see a Vietnam film. Like, you need time.
Yeah.
Please. So it's
there will be a quarantine romantic comedy that does work somehow, but I don't want to see it right away.
I don't want to see it right now. I don't want to see this right now. No, I mean, in 10 years, 5 to 8 years, it's like a When Harry Met Sally, but quarantine. Okay. All right. Maybe we can go back and revisit, and, at that point, hopefully we'll be past this, or it's Mad Max and we're just fighting for gasoline and water. So,
yeah.
It's either one or the other at this point. There's no gray. There's no gray area in this situation.
It's so awful. But that's the thing. Is I'm always up for a challenge, and I don't have a lot to do. And on a trickier note, on a similar kind of tangent, I need to make my health insurance money this year.
That's right, because you're SAG. So if you don't make a certain amount of money, but I gotta believe that SAG's not going to take care of their people even a little bit during this time.
I went to check on the SAG Health website, and the website said, "We're here to help. Click here." And I clicked on it and said, "Ways that you can get health insurance someplace else." And that's what it's not even a joke. They were like, "Have you thought about getting on your spouse's account? Have you thought about Medicare?" That's what it listed. It did not list it did not say anything else but that. That's what it's.
Wow.
Not even like, we're going to help you with Cobra. We're going to bring Cobra down. Nothing. They're just going to let people hang. And we're already a quarter of the way into the year, and actors are not working. I mean, I have some residuals coming in, but to make sure that I make my minimum, like I need to make a couple of movies.
Do residuals count as income? Okay, yes. So residuals do come out as but so you have to make something to kind of push you over the minimum to keep that health insurance.
Yeah, I mean, I make money in residuals, but like, is it guaranteed it's going to be enough? It's not. I don't know who's going to watch what, right? So a couple grand here, a couple grand there, just to make sure I pull in an extra, 10 grand this year kind of is important, and I sit there and, I don't know if that's going to, I don't know.
So I just want filmmakers listening right now to understand, you might have to put yourself at risk to make money to get health care to protect you from putting yourself at risk.
That's correct. That is 100%.
Jesus Christ, man.
Yeah, because I can't lose my. They're going to tell me that I'm going to lose my health insurance because I haven't gone to set, because they won't let me go to set because it might be bad for my health.
And that I thought the union was there to kind of really support and help, the actor.
They have some time to figure this out. It's not over today. I mean, people are not, but in 3 to 6 months, there are going to be some actors hurting that have not been able to work, and that's going to be a big deal by the end of the year. By the end of the year, it'll be a big deal. I'm
going to argue most actors are not going to be working, and there's going to be a Wild Wild West kind of atmosphere with this whole, everything's going to start going non-union. Actors are going to start jumping to non-union because I got to get paid. I got to screw the union, and I got to, they're not taking care of me. There's going to be kind of, you could see it too. You could see it all fall apart.
I've seen it already. I've been looking at the breakdowns and seeing that it's 80% non-union, and it's because people, and they're like, you'll be signing a waiver saying that you do not hold the production responsible if you catch COVID, things like that. I've seen that.
And that's just horrible, man. Like, how can you put I wouldn't be able to put anybody in risk for that. Like, no. It's not worth it, guys. I get it, but
it's crazy.
It's insane, dude. It's insane. Well, all right. So let's talk a little bit. Because we just brought the whole show down.
The darkness of the reality of the world that we live in. Okay.
It's starting to kind of really fall in there. So let's start bringing people up.
I felt you being like, okay, let's talk about bubbly stuff.
But I think we've beaten up everybody a little bit too much. Look, my audience is used to, the tribe is used to me telling the truth and the raw truth, and it's not always pretty. And I'm the first one that I've been yelling from the top of the hill, like, the film distribution space is burning. Hollywood is burning. The walls are coming crumbling down.
And even before we move on, I'd like to say one more thing from an actor's point of view, because this is very interesting as well, right? Because I bet you haven't discussed it. Like, the casting world is totally changing, right? From an actor's point of view, I grew up in a town where, like, when I moved to LA, I had to promise to call my agent every 2 hours, right, to get breakdowns. I had to promise, because when you got here, you had to be like, okay, I'm going to check in with my answering machine every 2 hours. If I have an audition, I have to drive to the valley to pick up my sides. They would have like a milk crate in front of the agent's door with a bunch of manila envelopes, and your name was on it. You'd grab your manila envelope and have the script and the sides inside of it. You'd go home, you'd work on it all night. You'd go to the audition the next day at the casting office. If they liked you, they said, come back at 3, meet with the producers, because the producers were live there. You'd meet with the producers, and then they would decide if they wanted to hire you. Now I can be anywhere in the world, and my phone goes point, ping. You have an audition, ping. Here are your sides, ping. Put yourself on tape, ping. Get it in by Friday at 3:00. Right? Right. It's totally changed. Now that's what changed a few months ago, right? Then in January, the world changed again, because I was still being told I had to go into casting offices a lot of the time, not all the time, but a lot of the time. Casting offices are now a thing of the past. I believe almost all casting offices will be gone by the end of the year. Because why would a casting director pay $5,000 a month for an office that they're not going to use because they don't want to see people in person? Right? The universe, right? And the whole world, we grew up in a world where like headshots used to be black and white, and then they started doing color. People were like, why? Why are you doing color? Who wants to see color headshots? I'm like, well, everybody wants to see color headshots, right? Who wouldn't want to see color headshots? So because of that, and all of a sudden there was a shift because it was cheaper. They could produce it. It all made sense. And then all of a sudden we had color because it was cheaper. But if people don't need office, if people don't need to like, have an office, if they don't need to like spend $5,000 a month for casting directors to be looking over headshots, if they know they can get actors to shoot themselves at home, so you don't need to hire an assistant to shoot them on location. If you know all that producers are casting from their houses and watching actors perform on film the way they're going to hire them anyway, why have a casting office? Why? It's going to go away. It's going to go away forever.
And aren't there? I mean, I know there are services and platforms out there who actors can just use, and filmmakers can go there and like, you put the ad out in that platform, and then you get 400 submissions. From actors, and you does
that. Yeah, and then,
I mean, again, not for name people, not for bankable actors. That's a different world. And for that, I do think casting directors have that access. They are still kind of that middle man, middle woman.
I'm not saying casting directors won't exist. I'm saying their offices will be gone.
Well, right. But the world of casting in general, like before, and correct me if I'm wrong, casting directors maybe had a little bit of bread and butter with just casting everybody, not just the main leads, but they would also cast out the rest of the movie or something like that. But now the power is a lot more in the producers and the filmmakers' hands, where they can go directly to the actor through one of these platforms. Am I wrong?
I disagree. I disagree. I think the thing is like you still need – there's too many. Like it's not a job that you want. That's like saying the producers can decide how they want the lights to be. They can just change the lights themselves on set. No, you need somebody else doing that because you can't spend the time doing it. You need a casting director to weed out the crap. You need her to tell you that you need to get enough break people and sit there and be like, she needs to go through the 400 submissions and go like, these are the 10 best. You still need the casting director to do that, right?
Okay.
You don't want to spend the time doing that. You don't want to look at all the crappy auditions. And I think that's, you can reach more people, but you still need a casting director to weed through it, right?
Right.
And I think when you're dealing with like, and yes, a good casting director also is able to work with you and be like, I know you're looking for someone who's like 12 to 18. I know you don't know that many 12 to 18-year-old actors. I have a group that I think are very, very good. Right. And then she can help, or he can help you break down and see those people as well and get those breakdowns done for you. So there is still a calling for it. There's just no need for the office. There's no need for me to live in Los Angeles. Like, my acting reel kind of speaks for itself. And I don't, half the jobs I get now are offers. So it's like, great, and then the other half, like, I put myself on tape. And a lot of the time I'm in the running anyway. So
that's a very interesting thing I wanted to talk about real quick because you brought it up. LA. So, you're from Boston. I'm from Miami. I've been out here 12 years. You've been out here a few more years.
Miami. Do not move back to Miami right now.
Absolutely not.
2020. Do not move to Miami. Okay, go on.
So I got out here 12 years ago, and it was always kind of known that if you want to make it in the business, you have to kind of do your time in LA. Whether that, to a point where like you've got to be here, you've got to make those connections. You have access to things here. There's just so much more. And to a large extent, I still agree with that. Do you absolutely need to? No anymore. Could you build a very lucrative filmmaking career outside of the system doing independent films in your hometown? I know these guys. But if you want to play in the big sandbox, you're going to have to come out here at a certain point. But for guys like you and me who've been out here, established ourselves already, we have reputations, we have filmographies, we have, credits. Does it make sense to spend obscene amounts of money to live here, taxes and all this other stuff? Or could we move somewhere else and it doesn't affect our business?
It's tough. As of today, it's a tough call. It's a coin flip today, which it never was a coin flip before.
Right.
I felt I had to be here, but when we deal with like the idea of what we're talking about, because I find it fascinating and I threaten every day to leave now, because every day.
You threaten, who are you threatening? Yourself? You're like, I'm going to just look.
Tell the dogs we're moving. They look at me and they're like, yeah.
We're moving to Toronto until the winter.
But I mean, for me, look, I work a lot. Like The Punisher was in New York, right? Jay and Silent Bob was in New Orleans. Mom and Dad was in Kentucky. Money Monster was in New York. A lot of the big projects I do are not in Los Angeles, right? Happy was in New York. So like I work a lot outside of LA. So why am I in LA? Why am I paying rent here when I have to leave here every time to kind of work anyway? And you sit there and you're like, if all the big jobs I get are someplace else, and all those jobs, I did not meet with them in person. Like none of those jobs did I meet with them. They just hired me from tape, or they hired me because they knew me, or they hired me because they saw my reel, right? So if that's the situation we're in, where like all my big jobs are that way, I'm living in LA to do what? Act in This Is Meg for shut up. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. A great movie, but I'm not getting rich doing it.
It's a bad connection, sir. It's a horrible connection.
I'm saying working for my friends.
Sure.
To live here. It's like I could sleep on somebody's couch and do that. I could still fly out and sleep on a couch and do that job and still not be spending the money I'm spending to live here. And it's not conducive to like having to live here, because you and I have like you said, we've really kind of like, we've spent our time here. We've paid our dues. Do I need to live here? I have a student who lives in England, and she and I were talking this morning. She's like, I really want to come to LA and take meetings. I'm like, honestly, right now, you're not taking meetings in person anyway. You should be taking meetings from England over Zoom with whatever agents you can talk to, because all you'd be doing is talking on Zoom from your apartment in Los Angeles right now. You would not be meeting them in person. So what's the difference of you being here right now? Now, she will eventually have to come here because she doesn't have the connection. She needs to meet people. That is eventually going to be part of the game. But, when I went to New York to do Happy for like 5 months, I told my agents, I said, hey, can we set up meetings with all the casting directors in town so that I can meet them here in New York? Because I'd like to work more in New York. And they called everybody, and every casting director said the same thing. We know Joe Reitman. We think he's great. We'll keep him in mind for stuff. If that's the case, why do I have to live in New York or LA? Because the reason in LA is the same thing. I know all the casting people. So if they know me, I don't need to be here. I only need to be here when I work.
Now, have you heard the same thing I've heard, that a lot of agents and managers are like, this is so much better working from home and taking 10 Zoom meetings as opposed to jumping in my car, driving an hour and a half in traffic, getting up for a 15-minute meeting, jump back in the car, go back to the office. I'm so much more productive doing these kind of meetings. Sure. You'll always want to have some dinner at the chateau, or you want to, the Ivy to have a lunch with the actor. Yes. But generally speaking, the agency is like, do you need those giant agency offices anymore?
My agency gave up their offices. They gave them up. Right. My managers gave up their offices. The agent's giving up the offices. And during this time period, one of them doesn't even live in LA anymore. They just left. One left and is working
just out
of her house. Yeah, she's working she has a house up north, and she's like, I'm there, and I know that, and she's gone. And my other agent is here, but he lives in West Hollywood and he loves it. So it's like he's never going anywhere. Right. But like he's but he's working from home too, and he gave up his offices months ago as well. If you sit there and like everyone's giving up the offices,
oh man,
if they're giving up their offices and they're not here, then why am I here? And they said to me, I said a year ago, I started playing with the idea. I'm like, do I move to Vegas? Do I move to Austin? Do I move to Europe? And they go, as long as you're near an airport, we don't care. That's what they said to me. As long as you're near an airport. And I'm like, yeah. And it's getting to that point where I have a better, I can have a better life than I do in LA. This town's outrageous, No,
there's no, look, I get you. I get you 110%, dude. This is a ridiculous town. And it costs so much to live here. A lot of people say San Francisco is the most expensive, but I argue LA is the most expensive because in San Francisco, people make more money than they do in LA. So, I mean, you make a lot more money working in San Francisco from
the prostitutes and cocaine here is much more expensive. It's better.
Obviously. All right. So let's get into, so we've kind of, the world's coming to an end. We all know this.
Right.
That's one of the reasons, again, why I wanted to have you on the show, because I wanted to hear an actor's perspective on what's going on, how we're moving forward. So filmmakers can really get in their head what an actor is going to go through in these next 6 months to 2 years. I mean, this is, and I've said this before. I'm like, look, if a vaccine shows up on December 1st, it's going to take a few months. Take a few months. I'm going to say, let's say it takes 2 weeks to get everybody a vaccine.
Let's say 2 weeks, we get 300 million people vaccinated. Right.
Two weeks tops. Yeah. And then and then we have to wait 6 months to see what happens with the vaccine, because it's still like, is it going to work? Is it not going to work? How long is it going to work? We're still we're going to be with this for a few years.
How many people does the vaccinate? How you vaccinate X amount of people? How many people get infected because of the vaccination? Right. I mean, there's all these other things that are going to happen.
There's so many other things, and we haven't. And I keep telling people we haven't even seen the bottom of our economy yet. Not even close to that.
I mean, look, as you and I both know, I have a lot of friends who've been getting the checks. I teach a lot. A lot of my students are giving. I mean, I understand they're getting this extra money from the government, and part of that's going to me because I'm teaching. What happens when that dries up this month? I'm going to lose some students for sure. My actor, waiter, bartender students who are Uber drivers are going to be hurting next month. Hurting. And it's not going to get better anytime soon. No.
I mean, if I would have told you in January, I'm like, hey, Joe, we're not going to have a blockbuster season, and Hollywood is going to shut down. And that big Christopher Nolan movie? Yeah, that's not going to come out till next year now. And
they're going to stop Wonder Woman.
They're going to stop Wonder Woman and Black Widow, and the Bond and James Bond. All of it is going to go, and there's going to be a resurgence in drive-in theaters. You would have looked to me and said, dude, whatever you're on, where can I get some?
If you told me The Empire Strikes Back
would be the number
in the country, I would have been like, what year do you think we're in? I would have no idea. No idea.
Right. So for anyone to even think that they have a clear understanding of where we're going is insane, because every day it's changing.
I did this movie called Max Reload and the Nether Blasters that's premiering tonight in a drive-in in Austin, Texas, right?
Right.
And I did this movie a year and a half ago in Arizona, and it's coming out August 11th on DVD and on a video on demand. And I'm like, these guys actually might make money in this movie with the movie that I didn't think. I was like, this is just a fun movie. Who knows if anyone's ever going to see it? I'm like, these guys are like, I'm like, this movie actually is going to play. I would have never thought that it was going to be playing theaters the way it's going to be playing, because people need content and it's a decent movie. You know what I mean? You sit there and you're like, oh my God, I can't believe like this is actually playing this way.
All right. So let's get off of COVID for a second, because you've had the opportunity. Just for a second, you've had the opportunity and the privilege of working with some of the greatest directors, legendary directors in Hollywood. You've worked with a lot of people. First of all, what are you looking for as an actor in a director?
It depends. Like we're talking about, like, if we're saying like, an up and coming director, if we're talking like your independent filmmakers, right? Because I mean, obviously, like, Amy Heckerling, whatever she says, right? Jay Schrader, you end up in a situation where you're like, okay, yeah, great, or somebody comes along, like, M. Night Shyamalan, it's like, yeah, whatever he says, it's like, yeah, right. I'm like, I'm going to work with somebody on those projects and be like, yeah, I want to be here. And still, I want to read the script and know what I'm getting into. For M. Night Shyamalan, I insisted on reading the script before I said yes, because I just wanted to know what I was getting into. They expected I would sign on because it was so much. Yeah. And I was like, I want to read it before I say yes. I don't know what you want me to do. Right. And they were like, fine. And they let me, but it was weird. And I started to go to a room and get locked in, and they took my phone and all that stuff. Right. So,
which one was that? Which was the film?
Lady in the Water.
That's right. That's right. You were in Lady in the Water. That's right. Yeah. That was M. Night he was at the height of his.
It was like, yeah.
He was the dude. Like, I mean, he actually has brought himself back a kind of a renaissance.
Agreed.
Which is great. But yeah, Lady in the Water was like, I remember that. It's kind of like like the pages are in black and you can't photocopy them and all that kind of craziness.
Crazy. But for an up and coming filmmaker, because I do get a lot of scripts from people who or like, hey, this is my first movie, or like I'm doing this web series, or hi, I know your friend Alex or Jill or whatever, and someone calls me.
Has that happened? Has that happened?
Not that specific one.
Okay, good. Okay, good.
Not that. But you know what I'm saying? I get those calls where someone says, I know blah, 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 and I was wondering if you would look at my thing because I saw this thing. And I get a lot of that. And, obviously almost all of those films have no money, right? That's like the big thing that you look at. And when I look at those scripts, if somebody wants – and I try to still be an artist at least once a year. It's kind of like one of my goals is at least once a year do something that I think is creatively interesting that's a risk either – for me as a role that I normally haven't played before, or someone who looks like they're an interesting filmmaker and they might not have any credits, but I kind of dig them and I want to contribute to like their cause, and I'd like to be part of their
journeys.
Right. Yeah, part of their journey, and you know what, the right calls that I make on those pay off in the long run. Somebody a year or two later, they get a feature and they always make sure I'm in the movie. That's the thing, right? It's time consuming to read every script that I get sent, no matter how good or bad it is. And the truth is, if your first 10 pages aren't good, I throw it in the trash. Right? That's
you give them 10. That's pretty immense. That's pretty impressive.
I want to see what happens after they start to launch into the story. You know what I mean? Right? Like, as well as I do, and your young filmmaker should know this. If your script isn't formatted right, I'm already going to throw it in the trash. If you can't figure out how to format a script, you
probably don't understand story.
That's right. If you can't format, you don't know story. And I don't even need traditional story. But it's like I am really good with experimental. I'm happy to work on experimental, but you need to understand like how to convey message, understand how to tell stuff in the right format and follow some rules. Picasso always said, you study art like a student and you break the rules like an artist, right? So I need to know that you know what you're doing in order to move forward.
Which was funny because when we first met, Jill brought you in because Jill's, a really good friend of yours to do Meg. And then Jill's like, Jill wants to have coffee with you. He wants to meet you and talk to you. I'm like, all right, sure. No problem. And you saw some of my work and all this kind of stuff, but you just wanted to see if I was, what was the purpose of that meeting? I know what the purpose of, but for the audience, what was the purpose of that meeting besides just to make sure I wasn't a freaking psychopath?
Yeah, that's really that's the main reason. That's really the main reason.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
That I'm not jumping into something where I'm going to resent being into like this film with somebody who doesn't know what he's doing, and I don't want to waste my time.
That not if it doesn't know what he's doing, but thinks he knows what he's doing, and walks on set with a monocle and a director shirt on, a shirt that says director on.
Director, iPhone. He has an iPhone. He's a dick. I don't want any of that, right? I don't want any of it. So, I don't want any of that. Like, the thing is, like, is he cool? Is he sane? Those are the two things, right? Is he cool? Is he sane? And does he know what he's talking about? If those three things checked off for Jill, then I'm good. You know what I mean? I'm like, I just want to make sure that I'm not diving into something that I don't want to do, and that's it. Because filmmaking's a process. It takes time. I don't want to waste my time, and like I said, once a year, somebody comes along and I go, that's good. That's actually good. I like that script, or I like that idea. Let me see what I can do. I'm also a big fan of trying to help young filmmakers, which I know that you are too. And if I see a young filmmaker who doesn't know that much or it doesn't have a lot of experience, but I believe that they actually can learn a lot and they actually and they're in a situation where I think they're kind and they're interesting. If we're in a situation where I know that me being on set will help move things along, I also like doing that too. An actor, director starts to melt down because they're not making their day. I'm like, okay, let's take 5 minutes and figure out what we need to do to make this work today. Okay, the shot's not working. Well, what should you do instead?
Right.
Yeah.
All right. Sorry. So working with someone like Kevin Smith, Wolfgang, or like M. Night, like what is it like working with guys like that? I mean, obviously Kevin's a legend in the indie film space. But M. Night and Wolfgang are like at a whole other area. They're just in another side of the field.
Right. I mean, Kevin's really easy to work with. He's like, I don't know what I'm doing. Kevin's just like,
I'm like the luckiest director ever.
He goes, I don't know why they're letting me make movies. I don't really understand any of this stuff. This is kind of crazy. I don't understand any of it at all. So that's one story.
I love Kevin.
What happens? I know, it's crazy. He's crazy. And then on the other end of that is like, like you said, Wolfgang was like, at the height of his career, doing The Perfect Storm.
And for everyone listening, we're referring to Wolfgang Petersen, the director of Perfect Storm, which Joe was one of the main characters in.
Correct. And so like when he was directing that movie, I got cast in that movie by an order of like weird circumstance. They fired the guy who was supposed to play my role. I don't know why. And I got called in last minute. They saw like 10 guys. And then I'm in the waiting room and they came out to tell us we didn't even know what the movie was. And then they were like, and they told us, and I went, do you want the Boston accent? And they said, can you do it? And the other guys in the room who I knew all went, crap. Because they realized I'm the guy from Boston. And so that's how that job happened. And I was like, that's so awesome. And when I got to set, I told Wolfgang, I go, I just want you to know, I'm so grateful to be here. It was my first big movie. And I was like, I don't know what to tell you. I'm so happy. And I don't know what you want me to do. But if you want me to do anything, because I haven't met you, you hired me off the Cape. And if you want me to do anything.
And I'm sure Wolfgang was like, dude, calm the fuck down.
So he reaches out and put his hand on me. He goes, it's nice to meet you too. And then walked away like the Pope. And I was like, what the hell just happened? I was like, what?
Was I just blessed? Was I just blessed?
And so, so then I did that scene. And then like 4 months later, what happened is that they added the scene at the end of the movie where they wanted my reaction in the bar because they felt like I should bookend the film after my first scene worked out and didn't suck. They were like, we need him to bookend. It was actually Michael Ironside's idea. He told it to Wolfgang. I saw him tell Wolfgang, he goes, this kid should be in the end. You want his eyes at the end of the movie. And Wolfgang was like, yes, that's a good idea. I was like, oh my God, they're going to make my part bigger. So they brought me back like three months later in LA. And I go up to Wolfgang and go, thank you so much for bringing me back. I just want to know, and when we shot the first scene and I went to Wolfgang, I go, he's like, okay, Joe, so you're playing Douglas Costco, and Douglas Costco, this is his wife and his daughter, and he loves them very much. And I went, okay, but Douglas Costco, he didn't have a wife or a daughter, and that's not. I studied him, and he was like a loner and depressed and drinking all the time. And Wolfgang goes, yes, okay, this is your wife and your daughter, and you love them very much. I went, okay, and I was like, my whole character just got thrown out the window. And they bring me back 3 months later. I'm at the end of the movie, and then he goes, I don't know what you want me to do. Do you want me kind of like screaming at the camera? Do you want me like crying? Do you want me to break a bottle? Do you want me to like, sit there and pound in it? Do you want me to storm out? And Wolfgang goes, Joe, this is what I want from you. I want you to act, okay? And the camera will push in, and the music will swell, and you will be brilliant.
That was the direction?
Yes.
Oh my God.
And then he walked away, and I was like, what do I do? I was like, I don't know what that means. I'm just not going to blink. I'm just not going to blink. And I just look at the camera. There's smoke. There's smoke in the room. But I'm looking at it. I'm like, just don't blink. Just do not blink. Do not blink. I'm like, don't do anything. And I didn't do anything. And I didn't blink. And then they go cut. And that was it. And then my mom saw the movie, and she was like, that scene at the end of the movie was so powerful, where you sat there and the camera pushed in and the music swelled and you were so emotional. And I was like,
I just didn't want to break.
Yeah. She goes, what were you thinking? I go, I was thinking, don't blink. And she's like, don't screw up this movie for me. Do not screw up this. But that was it. That was that movie. And then with M.
And I don't know if anyone heard it was The Perfect Storm. It was the one with George Clooney and a young Mark Wahlberg. Well, young everybody, but a younger Mark.
Yeah, we were all younger.
Yeah, we were all younger.
And then Lady in the Water was a whole other bag of worms because, I auditioned. I did this whole goth thing. I had like black eyeliner on, and I did a whole audition where I was like had my fingernails painted, and I got hired. And then they flew the entire cast out to Philadelphia to do a reading for M. Night, which I was like, they're flying us all out to do a reading, which of course now we'd all do over Zoom. But at the time they were like, they flew us all out, and we sat at this table reading. We read the whole script. We met everybody, and then at the end he stood up. He goes, I just want everyone here to know that you were all my first choices for this role, for this film. And I am so lucky to have each and every one of you here. I feel really, really, truly blessed to have this opportunity. And I couldn't be more grateful for each of you. So thank you so much. And the guy next to me goes, wow, do you believe that we're all the first choice? I go, I don't know if that was true, but that was freaking great. I go, true or not? I go, I don't believe it for a second, but I totally believe that he sold us all on the idea that we were like the greatest cast ever to exist. And that was great. Then he gave each of us half an hour with him to kind of like talk about what he wanted from each of us in our role. And
wow.
In my case, he said not eyeliner and fingernail polish. And then he goes, I want you to go home when you fly back to LA, and I want you to find something that represents the lady in the water to you. And I want you to carry that around with you until we have to fly back to film. So he wants all of this item that was personal to us, and then embrace that and not let it out of our sight, and then bring it back to Philadelphia and have it in our room every night. So we had this thing that we really identified with the lady in the water. It didn't have to be the same thing. He just wants all to have this thing that we loved dearly. And I was like, that's really good direction. Like, that's really somebody thinking this through, and working with everybody, and really working. And he was lovely and supportive and charming,
What's his directing style on set? Like, does he come up to you in between each take? Is he stuck behind Video Village? Like, how does he work?
Both. He did both. He was he was also in the film too, right? So he would sometimes be on set, do stuff, and then turn to us and be like, "Well, can I do this?" So that would happen sometimes. But a lot of the time, I mean, I've been very lucky in my career just to improv a lot of the time, right? So it's a running theme. Like in Clueless, I improv my entire scene, and Lady Water, I improved this whole. We had the group of us talking. He goes, "You guys just need to be talking about something. So what do you guys want to talk about?" So we had this huge conversation, and you hear it. We talk about who's the greatest rock and roll singer of all time, and I'm arguing for Axl Rose the whole time, and then, which I don't think he is necessarily the greatest, but he's my favorite. So, but Guns N' Roses is the greatest band to ever exist.
I mean, at that time, to be fair, at that time, there was an argument to be made.
There's an argument to be made, but people were arguing Bon Jovi and people with Bruce Springsteen, and I'm like, and I'm screaming, "Shut up!" And I'm just yelling the whole time. But but we just improv, and we were just trying to make each other laugh, And Jared Harris was another guy in our group, and he was great too. And there were other guys, but he was just supportive, and he knew all about us. I won a big poker tournament in between the filming and the ADR. When I got to ADR, he had heard about the poker tournament, and he just wanted to talk for 20 minutes before we started doing ADR about how I won the tournament and what happened. He showed a lot of interest in us during the whole process. And I haven't talked to him since, but during the process,
yes, and he hasn't called me for any other jobs, but when we were there
at that time,
solid.
Yeah, he didn't believe it was important. That's part of the director's job, right? To make every actor feel like they are a big part of this project, no matter what. He did that very well.
Now, and really quickly, you have dabbled in playing poker. I heard somewhere.
Yes, I played pro for 5 years. Yeah.
You're not pro anymore?
No, I don't play. No, a few things happened in 2011, 2012. Online gaming was shut down in the U.S., and that's really what I did most of my gambling on. And then I played during the World Series every year during that time. But I don't play enough because it got shut down, and I had to make a choice. My friends who were professionals moved to Canada, Mexico, or to Europe to continue playing, and I was not going to do that because I wanted to continue being in Hollywood. So. Yeah. Which means I didn't get to play enough, which meant that I was out of practice. And if I can't play on the level as them, I'm just going to lose money, and I did not want to lose money.
Fair enough. All right. Now, how do you like a director to approach you with notes after a take? Because a lot of times directors won't say anything. Right. They'll just say, "Cut, let's do it again." And you're sitting there going, what do I do? Or do you have because I'm sure you've heard them all. You've had someone yell at you from off screen, from the Video Village, "Make louder," or something along those lines. Have you ever been demeaned as an actor? That was horrible. You got to do it this way. What's from the both sides, the best and the worst situation? How do you, but in general, how do you like?
Look, I've had directors not even talk directly to me. I've just had the first AD come up and go, "Why don't you do it again, but do it like this?" But the director won't even come to set. She's someplace else, in another room.
Fair enough.
Come to, where I'm like, that's weird. They're not getting the direction from the director. The demean story comes from Charmed. On Charmed,
well, TV is a whole other beast.
When I did Charmed, I did 2 episodes, and the first episode I did was directed by Anson Williams, right? Who was on Happy Days. Yeah.
Yeah.
Anson Williams was on Happy Days.
He's done a lot of TV.
Yeah, but Anson directed a lot of TV, and he was directing our episode, and we worked really hard on developing this character that was unique and different from the show. There really had, I looked different, as you noticed, oddly enough. It wasn't like somebody who was normally on the show. I was playing a demon that was kind of like friends with them, but not kind of like – it was a mafia kind of family, but I definitely did not look like the rest of the guys. And I wanted to work with him. I go, how do you think this demon should act? Is he more human than demon? Is he cold blooded? And Anson and I spent a lot of time together. He was super friendly. He worked with me, told me stories about happy days. And I was like, I was really enamored of him and I thought he was great. Episode ends. Next week, come back to the second episode, right? I get to set and the whole cast tells me, they go, look, the director who's directing this episode is a real bastard to people who are the guest stars. So just be ready. I'm like, what? And they're like, yeah, he's great to the cast, but to the guest stars, he's a tyrant. He's awful. I'm like, okay, well, I'll be fine. I mean, I'm a good actor. I'm not worried about this. You know what I mean, right? We get to I'm like, all right. We get to set. Dude, we get to set, and then we do the first take, and I say my lines, blah, 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 and I hear, cut! And he comes up, and he goes, what the fuck was that? I said, excuse me? He goes, what are you doing? I said, what? I'm doing the character. He's like, what is that? I go, it's the character that me and Anson Williams worked on last week. He goes, hey, fuck Potsy. All right? Fuck Potsy. He says something. Right? And I go, what did you say? He goes, say it again. Say the line again. Come on, say it again. I said it again. He goes, say it again, but don't suck this time. Say it again.
Oh, in front of everybody.
In front of everybody. And he said that the third time. I went, I clearly need to go to my trailer and practice a little bit. And I walked away from him, walked off the set.
Oh.
He was like, where are you going? I go, my trailer to regroup and get better. Right?
With a tinge of sarcasm in your voice?
A little bit. I mean, I've just become more of a jerk since then, but whatever. But I was like and I walked to a trailer and I had to regroup because I was going to punch this guy. He was
right.
not.
I was about to say, from what I know of you, you're not going to put up with that.
So I regrouped and I came back out and he was in the middle of a meeting for the scene. And there was a stunt guy who was supposed to do a stunt for me where he was on wires and going to get lifted off the ground and thrown into a wall from like back wires. Right. That's time I moved. Right. Yeah. I walked down and he was talking about it. The stunt guy looked nothing like me. And I don't get doubled very often.
Not so much.
It's not easy to double me. I'm a big dude. I'm scruffy. It looks like you're stuck a mop in some dude's head. It looks ridiculous. So I heard the guy talking and I walked up behind him and I just said, I'll do the stunt. He was like, what? I said, I'm going to do the stunt. Throw me into the wall. I got it. And I did the stunt.
All right.
And yeah, we didn't have a problem after that. You know what I mean? Right? I problem solved for the guy. Right? And then he just never questioned anything I did again. And I got to tell you, like that job, more people talk to me about that job than anything else I've probably done in the last 20 years. And I know that I did a great job. He was a jerk. You know what I mean? People liked that show. And people are always like, you were great as the demon. It's like, yeah, great. Nobody was upset about it. He was just making it. But he made a bad day for me. It was the worst day on set that I remember ever having. It was the worst day.
Wow.
The best director, man, the best person I've ever worked with. I mean, look, I love working with Brian Taylor, and he's very close to me. And he directed Crank, Gamer, Mom and Dad, and Happy, and created Happy, and I love him dearly. And
by the way, for everybody who doesn't know, Happy is a show that was on Sci-Fi for a full how many seasons? A couple seasons, right?
It's been 2 seasons, but I was I was the villain.
But you were the main villain for the entire show. And by the way, you looked horrible.
Right. Yeah.
And that's a compliment.
I know. And I've worked with Brian for years, right? And on different projects. And he's just a guy, he offered me the role of that, to play that guy, which was a gift. And when I said, what do you want me to do? He's like, whatever you want to do. And that is such a rare thing to have, like a co-creator director tell you. It's like and give me months in advance notice so I could actually create this guy. I put on 35 pounds. I was much bigger than I am now, And, I was able to talk to hair and makeup and say, I want my teeth messed up. I want to I want bags in my eyes. I want my eyes bloodshot. I knew exactly.
Bad. Yeah.
And they let me kind of build the guy. They let me build him. And I was like, the puppet thing was something I created in rehearsals. And we had the idea of the puppet in the hand, and all that stuff came out because he gave me the freedom to be the artist that I wanted to be. And the showrunner came up to me day one. He's like, I was hesitant about you until Brian showed me you're real and you're really an artist, and we're so happy to have you here. That whole team was so supportive of me just doing whatever I wanted to get as weird as I wanted. I went out and begged on the streets of New York for a couple of days for change, and was acted homeless on the streets, and had Christmas lights in my hotel in my loft that they gave me, and I hung up Christmas lights and listened to Christmas music 4 hours a day, and
wow.
And just the apartment.
You went full De Niro on this. You went full Daniel Day.
I did. I went full on. I told myself I was going to do it exactly what I would have told my students to do, and I did exactly what I just stepped out myself. I Stanislavski'd myself and said, "What would you tell your students to do?" And I just did that. And I was, and for me, the freedom he gave me and the confidence he gave me in what I was doing, and the way he handled me is perfect for me. There was one day we had a shoot and I did something and we did table read. He goes, "Hey, that thing you did at the table read it?" I went, "Yeah." He goes, "Don't do that." And I was like, "Okay." I did something different and he was happy. That's the only time he ever questioned it. That day. He's like, "A thing? Yeah, don't do that again." I was like, "Yeah, I won't." Okay. But in general, just the freedom to kind of be as weird and crazy I want. That's such a gift, man. You never get that. So often it's you get 2 takes and they're like, "Moving on." You're like, "Do you want anything different?" "No, that was good." And you just don't even get to go there. So that was great.
Now, what is your best and worst Hollywood story? The craziest, and I think you already gave us kind of your best day, which was the one you just told me. So what's the craziest Hollywood story that you can tell on air publicly? Because I've heard a couple that you can't tell on air, but
oh, really?
Yes, you have some amazing stories, man. Because everyone listening, Joe knows everybody.
And are we saying my own personal best?
No, just stories that you've been in the vicinity of. Of something that happened somewhere.
I'm trying to remember. I don't even, because it's so weird because I was there. I don't really think about them being a big deal until people bring them up, and I'm like, "Oh my, yeah, that was nuts." I don't know. What story do you think I can't tell? That's the thing I want to know.
God, it's I remember you telling the Clooney story of how he used to when you were on ER. And then when you went on what is it, Money? What's it called?
Yeah,
Money.
Yeah.
And then
that's a fun story.
That's a fun story. That's not a crazy story. But then he was just because he's a trickster basically. He's a prankster.
Yeah, he just talked shit to me the whole time that I was in ER. He talked trash the whole time. For those who I was on an episode, season 2, episode 4, called That's
How is that
Life.
possible, sir? You're only 25.
I know. It's called That's Life. The episode's name is That's Life. And I play a chicken delivery guy. I'm the delivery guy. I only know this because recently somebody cast the show talked about something, and I went to look on my IMDb and I noticed I wasn't credited for doing ER, and I was like, how did I not get credited? And I had to go back and figure out how to list myself on the show. So I went back and figured out it was episode 2, 4.
That's why you know all these numbers, right?
Yeah, right. Yeah, because I had to do the homework to do the IMDb, and I'm the delivery guy. But delivery guy in this chicken suit, and when I auditioned for the show, the audition stories are much better than any other story. I can tell some other audition stories, but when I went in for the audition, they said they were looking for a chicken delivery guy, and I didn't want to go. It was just one line. I go, I don't want to do one line on ER. I want to be a doctor or an intern. My agent's like, look, you have no credits. You're going to audition for this intern, and I'm like, oh, so whatever. Audition, just play the delivery guy.
Did you have the hair yet or not yet?
Yeah, well, it was here, but it wasn't as long. It wasn't as long.
It wasn't gray. It was black still.
No, it was black. It was charmed. My charmed length, down to
Got
there.
Got it.
And I went in, and there was African American guys waiting to go in, and Asian guys, and fat dudes and guys with no chin, those redheaded guys with no chins that you see in commercials all the time, and nerdy guys, and and I was like, oh, I don't want to be here. And so they brought me in. And they said, okay, come on in. I went, all right. And I walked in, I go, are you ready? And my backpack over my shoulder. I had it over my shoulder. And I didn't want to do it. So I had the script in my hand like this. I went, you ready? They went, yeah, okay. I have a jalapeno fried for a Tom Perry in exam 3. Thanks. And I just threw the paper and I walked out of the room, right?
But that was earnest, though, that you really just did not want to be there.
I really didn't want to be there. I didn't want the job. I just threw the piece of paper and walked out of the room. And they called my agent and they were like, we're hiring him. He's amazing. He acted like a guy who didn't want to be in the chicken suit. And I was like, oh, no. I was waiting tables. I go, I don't want the job. My agent's like, they say you have to take the job, but they're never going to see you again for ER. And I was like, what? I go, oh, my God. They go, you might come back for ER in another role, but you're not going to be on the show ever if you don't take this job. And I was like.
And ER, for everyone listening, ER was the
big show. Yeah, the show. And I go, well, I'm not doing it. And I was waiting tables, and I was like, well, I'm not doing it for less than $1,000. And they said, fine. And I was like, I'm like.
They were probably going to pay you more.
I mean, it was 25 years ago. Like, they could have paid me $500, you know? I was like, I want twice what scale is. And they went, okay. I'm like, what? You know, I had no credits. I was like, okay. And so I just took it. Like, it made my quote higher. My day quote doubled in a day. And I was like, oh. And for me, that was a lot. You know, it's like, that's like 2 weeks of work. You know, it's like, that's a lot of money. And I was like, all right. So I did the job. I get to set. It's 110 degrees in Burbank the day that I'm working. I'm wearing this chicken suit. I'm miserable, right? I'm like wearing like a chicken suit, like this mascot suit without a head, right? And I'm like, oh my God, you know? And it was a different time, right? So please excuse the language because I don't hold this against Clooney at all because at the time it just didn't mean anything. And please, right. You know, and I'm standing there hot and all of a sudden I hear, hey, fag duck. Fag duck.
Oh, no.
Yeah. And I look down and Clooney's in his wheelchair. He goes, fag duck. Fag duck.
Oh, my God.
Like, oh, no. You know, I was like, that's awful. And then I was like, I'm just being mocked by Clooney. Just being mocked, right? You know?
And Clooney was at the height of his TV career. Not a movie. He wasn't even a movie star yet.
He was the sexiest man in America, but he was not like a movie star yet.
No,
but he was
the TV. He was the Tom Selleck Magnum PI of his day.
Just about to become Batman. Correct. Right. Yeah.
Right. Which by the way, worked out very fine for him. But we'll talk about Batman.
Yeah. And then so he says that I'm like, oh my God, he's just in a wheelchair doing wheelies next to me, mocking me. Right. And then we get to the, so then years later I get cast in The Perfect Storm and he's in the movie. I'm like, I finally made it. I go, I finally have made it. I go, I now actually am a huge movie, like in a huge movie. I have a huge part. I go, I'm going to get respect finally for the first time in my life. And from behind me, I hear, fag duck. I look over, Clooney's like.
He never forgot you.
He's that kind of great guy, though, who just remembers everybody and wonderful, and endearing.
And then years later, you get cast in Jodie Foster's film.
But what I can tell you is that we did that when we did Perfect Storm. I asked him about Batman. Oddly enough, I said, "What made you take Batman?" And he told me some stories about why he took Batman. He's just a good guy. He's a really good. He's really the most.
Why did he take Batman? Can you tell us? Is that public knowledge? Can you say why he took Batman? I'm assuming that there's a check involved. So
it really boiled down to the fact that he could do anything he wanted after he did it.
Because once he became Batman, then the doors swung up, like what they did for Val. Like Val did Batman, and then doors. That was the conversation. That was the conversation that we had. He said, we also, and we talked about why he didn't do an accent, the Boston accent for like The Perfect Storm. He had really good advice to me, very strong, and I still, he's a wonderful human being. Right. Very, very charming and endearing, and even his comments about me being that kind of duck, it was, even though today not appropriate, was very funny and charming and in no way derogatory, meant to be derogatory. I need to make that clear. In case absolutely. Yeah. And it was a different, I get it. And then years later from Perfect Storm, you get cast in what's it called? Moneyball? Not Moneyball, but
Money Monster. Yeah. I mean, and bizarrely, I knew the producers of that. I was coaching a kid who was auditioning for a different role and I read part of the script and I'm like, this takes place on a soundstage. And I've played a lot of crew people in my career, oddly enough, like in Jane Silent Bob and played in
first AD, right.
Yeah, I play a lot of guys who are like first ADs. I play a lot of them. I don't know why, but but people like to have me on set, and I do know how to point stuff out and be like, yeah, we need this, blah blah, lower the boom. I can call that out, So So what happens, I read a little bit of the script and I'm like, oh, there's a role here that'd be right for me. And I wrote to the producer. I said, hey, can we get Jodie Foster to watch this clip? Can I send it a reel? And they said, totally. And I sent something in, and they sent something else in, and they sent something else in. And eventually they hired me, and I showed up, and then Clooney and I were reunited again, for a third time. So,
and when he saw you, what did he say? Same thing?
The funniest thing about seeing him on the set, they showed up on set, as I see him, and I go, hey, George. And I'm wearing the headset, and I'm resting the first day. I go, hey, George. And he goes, hey. And he walked away. I'm like,
because he thought you were like a.
I was like, he must be in character or not thinking. I was like, that's really weird, right? And I turn my back, and 2 seconds later, I hear, shit, Joe. And I go, yeah. He's like, I totally thought you were just like a crew guy saying, hey. He's like, and that would be being a jerk anyway. I'm sorry, but I was like in my moment. I didn't realize you were checking in. Hey, how you doing, buddy? And then we caught up about everything for, we spent like a week or two talking, catching up a little bit. But it was very funny. It was very funny.
And these are one of the many layers in the tapestry that is Joe Reitman's Hollywood career.
Stuff. I mean, but Hollywood's, the thing is like, the horrid audition stories are much worse. There was a casting director I went in for a movie, that I auditioned for that was a war movie, and I gave the worst audition in my life. I went in and I just blanked. I couldn't remember anything. And it's normal for an actor. You can't be perfect all the time. Things happen. Words don't stick.
Sure.
I don't care how good you are. You have off days. Things are distracting. And I gave an awful audition. I asked the casting director, can I do it again? And she just said, no. And I was like, that was like a really painful day. It stuck out of my head because I remember being like, okay, no. Thanks for coming in. I went to audition for a pilot for HBO, and a casting director, as I walked into the office, I walk in and he's there on the phone, and he calls me in his office, and he goes, just make the offer to Kevin Smith. Mm-hmm. Just make it to him. Yeah. Don't worry about it. We're not going to hire anybody else for that role. I said, okay. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay, great. And I looked at him and I go, yeah, Kevin's going to be great. Obviously, we're auditioning for the same role. I'm obviously auditioning for the role that has just been offered in front of me to Kevin Smith. I'm like, Kevin's going to be great. And he goes, listen, Joe, to tell you, you need to really, really, really love your agents because they brought you in for this thing. They made me see you even though I didn't want to. I didn't want to see you today. So let's just read this now and get it done with. How's that?
Did you tell Kevin that story?
No.
You should still tell Kevin that story.
I don't know if Kevin cares. But I mean, there's other weird stuff. Like, I auditioned for these. My two favorite stories are like I auditioned for a pilot for HBO. It wasn't for HBO. It was for HBO was producing it for another channel at the time, mm-hmm. And it was for a role of this character named Yo-Yo, who was worked at a independent volunteer fire station in Colorado, and I created a character. I based him on Bobcat Goldthwait. So I did this character that was kind of just, I don't know. Hey, I got an idea. Why don't I walk over here and I just say, maybe it's not a good idea that we go out on the fire today? And I do a whole character like that, right? I don't understand why we're doing this.
Yes.
So I go to callback, I get called back, I go to producers, I go to studio, and I go to network, and I'm at HBO, and I'm sitting in the waiting room, and they told me it's between me and another guy, and as I'm sitting there, I look up, and I hear, hey, how's everybody doing? I look up, and Bobcat walks in the room.
Oh, my God.
And he sits down across from me. I go, are you reading for Yo-Yo? He goes, yeah, how would you know that? And I said, because I'm reading for Yo-Yo, and I did my audition as you. And he goes, do you want to take it outside? Because there really isn't enough work for me in this town.
You need to write that book. You need to write
the other one. I'll tell you that one too. I was auditioning for a show called Total Security, which was a spin-off, takeoff of NYPD Blue, kind of like an offshoot by Bochco. Okay. And I go into audition, and they bring me in to play this paparazzi guy. And this paparazzi guy is like this weird guy, and I based him on on Curtis on Booger from Revenge of the Nerds, right?
Wow, and, you're going deep.
Yeah, and I was like, what if Booger grew up and was this guy? What if that was the case? I'm like, okay, I'm going to create him as him. So I worked him as Booger. And I just did a lot of homework as Booger, and I kind of watched Revenge of the Nerds. And I'm like, okay, Booger grew up, he'd be like this guy. He'd be a pig, he'd be picking his nose, he wouldn't give a shit, he'd be gross. So I went to the audition at Fox, and as I'm like walking, I parked my car in their structure, and as I'm about to walk out, in drives this car, and who do I see but Booger? Step in front of the car, and I stop the car, and I go, and he looks at me like, what? And I go, are you auditioning for Total Security? And he goes, how would you know that? And I go, damn it! He goes, what? I go, I stayed up all night long preparing for this role, and I prepared him as Booger from Revenge of the Nerds. I prepared him as you. And he goes, that's so funny. He goes, because I think I'm totally wrong for this thing. We auditioned, right? And I'm at another audition 2 weeks later, and he walked in, right? We're auditioning for the same thing again. And he goes, did you book that Total Security? And I said, yeah. And he goes, I should retire now. I should just quit. That's what he says to me.
So you got hired playing somebody else, and that person couldn't get hired. Very similar to a Joe Reitman.
It's all it all goes in cycles.
It's called karma, sir. It is called karma.
They say all the time. Somebody says it's like the job. A friend of mine, Ron Livingston, said to me once when we were doing a TV show because we were talking about not getting jobs, and he said, that job that you're not getting today because somebody's more famous than you. It's like the day is going to come where you get that job because that new kid is in town and he's not going to get it. So it's all gonna.
There's a life. I love that whole like who the hell is Joe Reitman? Yeah, get me Joe Reitman. The whole the 5 stages of Hollywood. It's very true, and it happens for. By the way, it happens for to a certain extent for directors and screenwriters and everybody. Like, oh yeah, instead of getting a younger one, give me a cheaper.
Right. Yeah.
Give me a cheaper.
Blah blah. So crazy.
So I'll ask you a last few questions, sir. I ask all my guests. If you had any advice to give a filmmaker trying to break into the business today, what would it be?
Advice to a filmmaker?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I mean, obviously, number one is write a great script, right?
Mm-hmm. Or have access to a great script.
Yeah. Write a great script or access to a great script. I mean, if you can write your own script, you write your own ticket about what you need to do next, right? I mean, that's a great script opens up all the doors. Even if you don't get to direct that one, it's going to open the door for the next one to direct. So I think, writing a great script is huge. 2, man, just start shooting. I mean, when you and I started, that you couldn't just start shooting, but everyone has a camera in their pocket, right? So, and I got to tell you, like, so that iPhone stuff that I shoot looks great. So I sit there and I go, you can do a lot with very little with the magic, whatever you need to do, right? So you have a black magic, whatever it is. I mean, it's not hard to get your hands on something.
I mean, that little camera I shot was like $1,000 camera.
That's what I'm saying. You don't, and reds are, readily available if you know the right people, and it's not like you can't do a lot, right? So you just
there's no excuse anymore. There's no excuse anymore.
No, you just need to be able to put it together. So I mean, I think that's the main thing. You start shooting.
Now, what is the lesson that took you the longest to learn, whether in the film business or in life?
It's funny. The one that probably is the truest that I still don't do. I learned from Hamilton, the musical, which is
fantastic, obviously.
Yeah, because Burr says to Hamilton, he goes, "Talk less, smile more."
That's actually no. You know what? That's not bad advice.
No, I mean, I sit there and I go, I wish I could watch myself. I mean, I would argue that a lot of my success is because I don't watch my mouth. And even you and I had this talk before we started doing this interview, right? Mm-hmm. I was like, it's like, look, people like me to kind of like my energy comes through and kind of like me not watching what I say or not caring what you think. And I do a lot of my best work. People just go like, just let him run his course. Right. Yeah. I have lost jobs for doing that too,
So it's your greatest strength and your biggest weakness at the same time.
Yeah. Thanks, Dad. That's all my dad. But
it's one of the reasons why it makes me the same kind of thing that you deal with. For me, it's like the energy that I need to be a director and to be in control of my own destiny as an entrepreneur is the reason why I'm a horrible employee.
Right. Me too.
Horrible employee. Fired from both my jobs early in my 20s, gloriously fired, and very proud of my firings. And I just am not designed to be an employee. I'm just not. I'll work with people. I'll work on a project. I have clients. That's a different conversation.
I've directed commercials that are $500,000, $1 million commercials, and that's not a problem, right? And I don't even flinch, right?
And you have a client, and you've got sometimes you got idiots you have to deal with. That's just different.
Yeah, directed for like CBS and had to deal with with the sponsored products that we had to deal with, and did some stuff like that. I might not like it, and I might kick and scream a little bit, but it's different. But you say the wrong thing to me, and I just go, what? And I'm done. It's why I need unions to protect me, because I will not let those things.
You're your worst enemy, sir. You are your worst enemy.
And also the greatest hero. But it's I also, right? I'm the guy. You piss me off. You need to know, what you're getting with me is I might set fire to everything, which might make it spectacular or might burn everything down. I don't know what I'm going to do. And, I think that's difficult. But
this is why when we work together, I just sat back and I was like, I'm just here to capture the lightning. When it was with you and Jill, I just sat back. I'm like, I just gave you guys a little bit of a tap here, a little bit of a tap there, and just go.
Yeah. And I think that's the thing. It's and I learned it the one I learned fairly early is my best asset is no fear, right? Having no fear is kind of what's really suited me the best. And whenever I have fear creep in, it's my biggest issue in stopping me from doing whatever I need to do to get to the next level. But career-wise, I tell everybody the same thing. Your writing is the biggest weapon that you can use in this town. Every big break I've had in Hollywood has come from writing or creating my own thing, whether it's been from improv or whether it's been because I put a pen to paper or started typing on a keyboard. That's where all the real opportunities have come from. All of them, not all the biggest jumps have been because of something that I created, not from something that I waited for.
Or waited for permission for.
Yeah.
Yeah. And last question, sir. 3 of your favorite films of all time.
Rocky, Animal House, and Apocalypse Now.
Wow. You just had them on tap.
Those are my 3. Those are the 3 that motivated me the most to become who I am.
Rocky, Animal House, Apocalypse. all fantastic films. But there's a very nice crossroads of all 3. It's 3 different genres. It's just.
Yeah, exactly. For me, that they're the 3 that really shaped who I am to become who I am. There have been great movies since then, but those are the movies that had the most influence in my career and therefore kind of really made a difference in my life. So that's why I always say those 3.
And then, is there any place that an actor or a director might want to take one of your classes or talk to you or anything like that? Do you offer anything? Do you want to give that information out or not? It's up to you.
Yeah. Look, I'm easy to find. If you want to find me on Instagram, I'm at Joe Ugly. I'm so easy to find. Or write me on Facebook, Joseph David Reitman. Find me. Those are the 2 best places to reach out to me. I teach classes during the week. I coach actors privately also. And, I'm always looking to create and collaborate. So anybody who has a great script and wants somebody.
Careful.
Oh, man. Doesn't mean that I'm going to guarantee I'm going to do it, but you're welcome. I'll tell you if I think it sucks.
This is true. This is true.
I'm saying, you can send my stuff, and if I have time, dude, we're COVID. Now's the time to reach out because I got nothing to do but read scripts and spend a little time looking at stuff. So,
Joe, man, I could talk to you for another 2-3 hours, brother. I really appreciate you taking the time. As very busy, obviously, all of us, to do this and being so raw and honest with us, and I truly appreciate it, man. So thanks again for talking to the tribe today, brother.
Dude, anytime. I'll come back and talk to you anytime. I hope we get to work together soon too.
I want to thank Joe for coming on and dropping those knowledge bombs on the tribe, as well as those amazing, entertaining stories. I swear, Joe, why you don't have a podcast right now interviewing people that you know in the business is beyond me. But, I'm just saying. If you want to get links to anything we talked about in this episode, please head over to the show notes at indiefilmhustle.com/416. And guys, next week, we will begin our massive Black Friday, Cyber Monday, November, December, January sale extravaganza on Indie Film Hustle TV and Indie Film Hustle Academy. I got a bunch of new courses and webinars coming out as well. We have how to pitch your script to an investor, how to package a project, how to find money, just a ton of amazing stuff coming out starting next week. So keep an eye out for that. Thank you guys again so much for listening. As always, keep that hustle going. Keep that dream alive. Stay safe out there, and I'll talk to you soon.
Thanks for listening to the Indie Film Hustle podcast at indiefilmhustle.com. That's INDIEFILMHUSTLE.com.